Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, checking the news, and discovering that your MP, the person you voted for, the candidate who wore their party's colors and promised to represent their party's values, has suddenly decided, you know what? I'm joining the other team now. Welcome back to Canadian Insights, where today we're diving into one of the juiciest allegations in recent Canadian political memory. According to Sun political columnist Brian Lilley, the Liberal government under Mark Carney isn't just trying to win seats the old-fashioned way through elections and policy. Nope, they're allegedly going full house of cards, actively courting MPs from other parties to cross the floor and join Team Red. And Lilley's claim? The Liberals will take a majority any way they can get it. Buckle up, because we're about to explore floor crossing, political poaching, and the question that should concern every voter. Is your vote really worth anything if MPs can just switch teams whenever it's convenient? So let's start with what Brian Lilley is actually claiming here, because this is spicy stuff. According to Lilley's reporting, Liberal operatives have been actively courting MPs from at least 2 other parties, trying to convince them to cross the floor and join Carney's government. And when Lilley says don't believe the denials, he's basically calling out what he sees as the official line from the Liberals, that this isn't happening, that these are just rumors, that nobody's trying to poach MPs. Lilley's saying that's nonsense. He's saying this is absolutely happening, and it's happening because the Liberals are desperate to secure a majority government without having to actually win one through an election. Now, for anyone not deeply familiar with parliamentary politics, let me explain what floor crossing actually means. When an MP crosses the floor, they're literally walking from one side of the House of Commons to the other, switching their party affiliation. They were elected as a Conservative, or an NDP member, or a Bloc MP, or whatever, and then they decide, actually, I'm a Liberal now. And here's the kicker, they get to keep their seat. They don't have to run in a by-election. They don't have to go back to their constituents and say, hey, I know you voted for Party A, but I'm now with Party B, is that cool? They just switch, and suddenly the seat count in Parliament changes without a single vote being cast. This practice is completely legal in Canada, but it's also incredibly controversial. Because think about it from a voter's perspective. You show up on election day, you look at the candidates, you make your choice based on party platform, party leader, party values, and you cast your ballot. Then 6 months later, your MP switches parties and everything you voted for is out the window. Your vote, in effect, has been nullified. You voted for one thing and got another. It's like ordering a burger and halfway through your meal the restaurant announces it's now serving pizza and your burger is actually a calzone now. Surprise! Lilley's reporting suggests that the Liberals under Carney are actively engaged in this practice right now, reaching out to MPs from other parties and trying to convince them to jump ship. And if you're wondering why the Liberals would do this, the answer is pretty straightforward: math. If the Liberals can convince enough MPs to cross the floor, they could theoretically gain enough seats to form a majority government without ever facing voters. That's a huge deal because a majority government can basically pass whatever legislation it wants without needing support from other parties. It's the holy grail of Canadian politics. And according to Lilley, Carney and the Liberals are willing to use backroom deals and political seduction to get there. Now, the Liberals would probably tell you this is all conspiracy theory stuff, that Lilley's making mountains out of molehills, that conversations between MPs and party officials are normal and don't constitute some sinister plot. But Lilley's pushing back hard on that narrative. His don't believe the denials line is essentially saying, look, I know what I'm hearing, I know what my sources are telling me, and the official denials are just political cover. He's staking his credibility as a journalist on this claim, which suggests he's pretty confident in what he's reporting. Let's talk about which parties might be targeted here, because that context matters. Lilley mentions MPs from 2 other parties are being courted, but he doesn't specify which ones in the available information. However, we can make some educated guesses based on the current political landscape. The NDP would be an obvious target because they're already somewhat ideologically aligned with the Liberals on many issues. We've seen Liberal-NDP cooperation before, so convincing an NDP MP that they'd be more effective as a Liberal isn't a huge stretch. The Bloc Québécois could be another target, especially for Quebec MPs who might be promised cabinet positions or regional influence. And then there are the Conservatives, which would be a tougher sell ideologically but not impossible, especially for moderate Conservatives who might feel alienated by their party's current direction. The thing about floor crossing is that it usually happens when MPs feel they have something to gain. Maybe they're offered a cabinet position. Maybe they're promised influence over policy in their region. Maybe they're just unhappy with their current party leadership and see better opportunities elsewhere. Or maybe, and this is the cynical take, They look at polling numbers and realize their party is going to lose the next election, so they jump to what looks like the winning team to save their political careers. It's not always about high-minded principle. Sometimes it's just political survival. What makes Lilley's reporting particularly interesting is the timing. Carney is still relatively new as Prime Minister, having recently taken over from Trudeau. He's trying to establish his own identity, his own political brand, and his own path forward for the Liberal Party. If he can secure a majority through floor crossing rather than through an election, he buys himself time. He can implement his agenda without immediately facing voters. He can avoid the risk of losing seats in an election. It's politically smart, even if it's ethically questionable and democratically dubious. But here's where this gets really messy. If Lilley's reporting is accurate and the Liberals are actively courting MPs to cross the floor, what does that say about the state of Canadian democracy? It suggests that party leadership views MPs not as representatives of their constituents' choices but as movable pieces on a political chessboard. It treats election results as suggestions rather than mandates. It prioritizes political strategy over democratic accountability. And it sends a message to voters that their choices on election day are just the opening bid in an ongoing negotiation that can be overturned through backroom dealing. There's also the question of what happens to these MPs politically once they cross the floor. History shows us that floor crossers often face brutal consequences at the next election. Voters don't like feeling betrayed, and switching parties is often seen as the ultimate betrayal. So while an MP might gain short-term benefits from crossing the floor, cabinet position, influence, job security in the current parliament, they often pay for it when they have to face voters again. Constituencies remember. They remember being told one thing and getting another. And they're not usually forgiving about it. Lilley's framing, that the Liberals will take a majority any way they can get it, is deliberately provocative, but it raises legitimate questions about political ethics and democratic norms. Is it acceptable for a party to circumvent the electoral process by poaching MPs? Is there a difference between an MP genuinely changing their political beliefs and joining a party that better represents those beliefs versus an MP being recruited with promises of power and position? And should there be rules or restrictions around floor crossing to protect the integrity of election results? Some countries have addressed this issue through legislation. Some require MPs who cross the floor to trigger by-elections. Some have rules about when floor crossing is allowed. Canada has been reluctant to implement such measures, partly because of concerns about MP independence and partly because every party benefits from floor crossing at some point, so nobody wants to close that door permanently. But the result is a system where the party composition of parliament can change significantly between elections without voters having any say in the matter. What's also worth considering is what this tells us about the current political situation. If the Liberals are indeed actively recruiting MPs from other parties, it suggests they're not confident about winning a majority in the next election through normal democratic means. They're looking at the polls, they're assessing their chances, and they're deciding that poaching MPs is a safer bet than facing voters. That should tell you something about their internal read of their political situation. Parties that are confident in their electoral prospects don't usually resort to aggressive floor-crossing campaigns. Parties that are worried do. Now, Lilley's sources and methods aren't fully detailed in what we have available, but he's a veteran political columnist with extensive connections in Ottawa. When someone with his experience and track record makes claims this bold and tells people not to believe the denials, it's worth taking seriously. Either he's right and this is happening, which is a major story about democratic accountability, or he's wrong and has staked his reputation on claims he can't back up, which would be a significant journalistic failure. Given his position and experience, the former seems more likely than the latter. The broader context here is also important. Canadian politics is in a weird place right now. We've got a relatively new Prime Minister who wasn't elected to that position by voters but rather chosen by his party. We've got minority or near-minority government dynamics that make every seat count. We've got parties positioning for the next election while trying to govern in the present. It's a recipe for exactly the kind of political maneuvering Lilley is describing. When the margins are tight and the stakes are high, parties get creative, and sometimes that creativity involves trying to change the rules of the game while the game is being played. If you're an MP from another party right now and you're being courted by Liberal operatives, you're facing a genuinely difficult decision. Do you stay loyal to the party you were elected under, knowing it might not be politically advantageous? Do you cross the floor and accept the benefits but risk voter backlash? Do you consider what your constituents actually want, or do you prioritize your own political survival? These aren't easy questions, and the answers determine not just individual political careers but the composition of our government and the direction of our country. The phrase "any way they can get it" is doing a lot of work in Lilley's framing. It suggests desperation. It suggests a willingness to bend or break democratic norms. It suggests that the goal, a majority government, justifies the means, regardless of what those means might be. And if that's truly the Liberal approach under Carney, it raises serious questions about what kind of government they intend to run and what other norms they might be willing to compromise to maintain power. For voters watching all this unfold, the message is pretty clear. Pay attention to what your MP does between elections, not just on election day. Check if they are still representing the party and platform you voted for. Hold them accountable if they switch teams without consulting constituents. And most importantly, remember this when the next election rolls around. If floor crossing has become a normal tool in the political toolkit, voters need to respond by making it politically costly for those who do it. If this dive into political floor crossing and backroom dealing has got you fired up, hit that like button and subscribe to Canadian Insights. We're posting multiple times daily, breaking down the stories that matter and the political maneuvers that shape our government. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about floor crossing. Should it be allowed? Should MPs be required to trigger by-elections if they switch parties? And do you believe Lilley's reporting, or do you think this is overblown? Let's discuss because this stuff matters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll continue exposing what's really happening in Ottawa. Stay informed, stay skeptical, and remember that your vote should mean something more than just the starting position in an ongoing political game. See you next time.